Hello, I'm Zach Northup, and this is For Others Beyond Themselves. The following interview is with a man that I deeply respect. His name is Major General Don Shepperd. I've known Don since 1997, and when I first interviewed him as the director of the Air National Guard. And over the years, we have kept in contact, and he has always been very helpful when I needed to speak with someone who was knowledgeable about the things going on overseas. He is currently a military affairs analyst for CNN, and also has a great book out. It's called Bury Us Upside Down, The Misty Pilots and the Secret Battle for the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You can get it on Amazon. But my latest conversation with him was centered around a trip that he just took to Israel, where he interviewed and spoke with many of the top officials in the Israeli Defense Force regarding the recent war in Lebanon. Even though major hostilities have ended there, Iran and Syria continue to rearm Hezbollah and have also started flowing significant materials and arms to Hamas over in the Gaza Strip. Don talked with Israeli officials about this and has some frightening forecasts, frankly. Here's the interview.
The trip was at the behest of the American Israeli Education Foundation. It's one of several foundations of Israel that basically try to get U.S. citizens of some prominence over there to show them the country, to explain Israeli views. What they want to do, obviously, is explain the Israeli viewpoints on important issues such as the Palestinian issue, the recent Lebanon war, the fence wall, actions in Gaza and the West Bank, that type of thing. And so this trip was a group of 8 of the military analysts that you see on TV from the various networks, the talking heads, as the vernacular goes, the warheads. And the idea was to really expose us to all levels of Israeli society, from top levels of government down to the public. And the real focus was on the recent war with Lebanon, mistakes made, successes in the war, and also to talk about the defense and the actions going on in Gaza. So that was the focus of the trip.
You had access to fairly high or very high level individuals, correct?
Yeah, we really did. We got lots of the top staff from the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, that had been involved in the recent fighting. We also got access to top-level current and former government officials, one of them being Avi Dichter, who's number 2 man in the Kadima party. That's the party that's in power right now, Prime Minister Olmert's party. And he's also the former head of the Shin Bet or Shabak, their FBI. We also got to spend time with Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the leader of the Likud party. They're in the minority now, and he's the minority leader in the Knesset. If they have a change in government, he stands a good chance of being prime minister again. So we did get involved with high-level people and people from all over the country as well, not just the politicians and television gurus.
There have been a number of public reports out about the morale and, in some cases, the disgruntlement of some officers within the IDF. Did you get a sense for that?
Yeah, we sure did. There is disgruntlement, and it's disgruntlement within the public and disgruntlement within the military for several reasons. And you have to step back and take a look at what went on. First of all, you got to realize that the population of Israel is about 1/40th of the United States. There are about 7 million people in Israel. Almost 300 million in the U.S. So whatever casualties you have, multiply it times 40, and you can see the effect it would have on the United States. So you start off with the fact that Israel is a casualty-intensive country. The country they went to war because they had the kidnappings in Gaza, and the kidnappings also up on the Lebanon border by Hezbollah. And then the rockets started falling. The reason that the people are disgruntled is 2. Number 1, it did not end up in a clear victory. And number 2, the military was never able to stop the rain of rockets that fell on the country. The plan of Israel, long practice plan for southern Lebanon had been, and let me back up just a second and say that Israel sat there and through its mechanisms its intelligence mechanisms, watched the Hezbollah move into southern Lebanon, construct their defenses, bring in weapons, and yet they were still surprised because the plan all along for southern Lebanon had been to insert in a rapid movement north along the Litani River, about 20 miles into Lebanon, and then move west from northeast Israel, the Golan Heights area in Galilee, link up, and then move south behind the defenses. Instead, what they did was move forward into the defenses from the border. It fits and starts right into the face of the defenses, and they produced some 119 casualties. So if you multiply that times the population factors that I talked about, it's like 40,000 casualties in the 30-day war, almost the Vietnam-style casualties. So it's a big deal in Israel. And the rain of rockets never stopped. And so there is general disgruntlement that the country, the military did not follow the plan. And so that disgruntlement moves over into the government itself. Now, a couple of other things. There are reasons that that Israel did not exercise its plan. Prime Minister Olmert's reasons supposedly was, look, we knew that we had abandoned Lebanon in 2000. We were not going to go back in and reoccupy Lebanon, and so to go back in and exercise our plan would have cost many, many more casualties for land that we were going to give up anyway, when the solution was to get the Lebanese army down south and to get the UN forces in, the UNIFIL forces in there to do the work. And so why should we have done an operation that produced a whole bunch of casualties? That was his political reason for the actions that he took. Now, from the Israeli military standpoint, there have been lots of budget cuts recently in Israel on the military, and so their training days for the reserve forces have been cut dramatically, and they're mainly a reserve force nation. When they go to war, their economy stops, the reserve forces are called up, and then they go to war. Those reserve forces training days have been cut back, and so they were not particularly proficient, and the proficiency they had was aligned with tactics that they have used in Gaza. Now, Gaza, although they're using military forces and military equipment, is much like police work. You have intelligence, you're going after a guy or a cell or a hiding spot for weapons. You go in, you encounter some resistance, you back off, you talk about it for 6 or 8 hours, you bring in more forces, you approach from a different direction. It's like police work where you're trying to prevent casualties. In war, particularly maneuver warfare against defenses, well-prepared defenses, you are moving in a lightning fashion, a blitzkrieg type warfare, where you are moving quickly. You're attacking into those defenses. You're not waiting to come up with new tactics and talk about it. And so the military was trained for Gaza and its police work, and not for the type of warfare that they encountered in southern Lebanon. So they were ill-prepared from the standpoint of readiness, and they were ill-prepared from the standpoint of tactics. They were also criticized for an air power-centric strategy, which is, they basically said, well, we're going to go in and use air power to take out these missiles. Air power did what it could. It took out the long-range missiles that were high-profile launchers that could be easily found, but it had real trouble, of course, finding the mobile launchers that were hidden in buildings, pulled out quickly, fired, and pulled back into those buildings. In some cases, very well camouflaged and had real difficulty with that. So air power certainly cannot do everything. But the idea was to use air power and limited ground offensive to limit the casualties and get UNIFIL in, which they did. Now, the ever-cynical Israeli public thinks that Prime Minister Olmert, by commissioning around 50 commissions to look at the tactics and the results of the war, is simply trying to stave off a vote of no confidence in the elections. So once these commissions report, which will be around the end of the year, the results of that will be looked at, and then the country will have to decide whether it calls new elections, in other words, whether people have lost confidence in the government, whether they can get a budget through by the end of the year or not. All of those things can cause new elections in Israel. So lots to be decided there, but the picture is that the military is disgruntled, that they did not come across, they did not use their plan, they did not end up with a victory, and they look weak in the eyes of their enemies. And the view of the public is the military could not protect them from the rockets. And so everybody on both sides, the military and the public, is disgruntled.
From your perspective as a former military officer, whenever you say that they ran into trouble, the IDF ran into trouble because they didn't follow the plan, does that say anything about the flexibility or capability of the IDF to adapt?
I think that the IDF is one of the most flexible and capable forces in the world. They have been at this war a long, long time. There is no flexibility that will allow you to use tanks and move into prepared defenses in a frontal attack. It's just not something that is going to get better as you do it. I think the military is certainly capable. They were not turned loose to do all of the things they would like to do. I'll give you one example, though: the lightning raid up north that they took on the Hezbollah headquarters. I mean, that was a very, very dangerous raid that turned out in a disaster, but they pulled it off, got some prisoners and what have you. So I don't think it says anything about the flexibility of the military. It says a lot about the strategic plan. It has similarities to Iraq, in which there's a lot of argument about our strategic plan for the war from a government standpoint, and then whether or not you use it, whether or not you use the right number of troops and tactics. So if Israel does this again, I think you'll see them use the flexibility and innovativeness that they're known for.
Based on the interviews and the discussions you had, and contrasting that with a lot of the reports that came out during the war, it seems somewhat surprising that the Omer government is saying that getting UNIFIL in, or a strengthened UNIFIL in the Lebanese army into southern Lebanon was the strategic goal, given that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but towards the waning days of the war, the Israelis were pretty adamant, at least publicly in the diplomacy, about wanting some replacement for UNIFIL and not really having a lot of confidence in the Lebanese army.
Yeah. Okay. Now you gotta realize a couple things. Number one, southern Lebanon was Hezbollah country. There was no Lebanese army at all in southern Lebanon. Period.
Right.
Also, the UNIFIL forces were there. There were some 40 observation posts, basically sat there and reported over the years and allowed the Hezbollah to rearm, to construct their defenses, construct their defenses, and basically didn't do anything. The UNIFIL forces that are in now are much more robust. I mean, you were talking a number of 1,000 or so before. Now you're talking around 15,000 UNIFIL forces plus the Lebanese army. So if Hezbollah can be kept from rearming in southern Lebanon the way it did before, if it can be kept from constructing the types of defenses that it did before, this will be a gain of a 20-mile buffer zone, which will keep the shorter-range Katyushas out of the major cities. It won't keep them out of the border cities, but it'll keep them out of Haifas and that type of thing. It won't keep them out the long-range rockets. But basically, the Israelis, the Prime Minister Omer said it was a strategic goal to get done what was done. It was a goal that morphed on the fly, like our morphing reasons for going to war in Iraq. That was not stated before the war, that what we want to do is get the UNIFIL forces in there. This is something that occurred as a result of the war, saying the best thing we can do is get UNIFIL forces, get a border zone North Litani, get the Lebanese army in there, and hopefully they can do something.
Were there any discussions about the cruise missile attack on the Navy ship, the Israeli Navy ship? I guess it was.
Yeah, that's one of the inquiries that's going on. This is a screw up. The Israeli Navy has systems that basically will thwart cruise missiles, that will divert them and also will shoot them down. And those systems evidently were not used. It appears to be a casualness. They didn't think that the Hezbollah would have that type of missile, and so basically they were lax in using their defensive systems. Is the early word. Now there's a commission investigating that, but it may be that the head of the Navy is replaced if they found out that the Navy was lax in not using their equipment that was available.
Was it in fact a C-802? Is that?
Yes, it was reportedly a Chinese C-802 that the Iranians basically bought and then shipped to Hezbollah through Syria.
Now that was again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the C-802 is a radar-guided cruise missile, is it not?
Yes, it is.
who was operating the radar system? Was that Hezbollah?
No, it has an onboard radar.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm not an expert on it. I'd have to check that out for sure. But you have a radar component for searching out the target and launching, and then it has a onboard radar, I believe, and that's what you can use to divert with onboard systems, if I'm correct.
Well, even if it was to acquire the target, you would have to have some type of land-based system. I mean, that is a sophisticated weapon system, and
it is sophisticated. Now, they only had one of them, but they also had a UAV reportedly. So these guys are not. The Hezbollah is a ragtag army by our standards, but it's not dumb by any means, and they've got sophisticated stuff that they brought in from Iran, and Israel was surprised by some of it, no question about it.
Could Hezbollah exist without Iranian assistance?
Absolutely not. First of all, the Hezbollah is a Shia organization in the Sunni area. They basically receive their funding from Iran. Iran buys weapons. They produce some weapons themselves and provide to the Hezbollah. They also buy weapons from North Korea. They ship them through China. Those Chinese ships bring them to Iran, and then they are brought through the smuggling mechanisms, usually flown into Syria, and then moved overland from Syria into Lebanon itself. And it's all Iranian money and Syrian conduit that does this.
Since the war has ended, is there any indication that the Iranians have pulled back their support for Hezbollah?
No, there's no indication of that at all. It's all tied up in all of the negotiations and talks and what have you over the Iranian nuclear program. I'm sure that they are holding support for Hezbollah hostage to what happens in that whole arena. Hezbollah, we view in the West as a terrorist organization. The Israelis view Hezbollah as a forward commando division of the Iranian army. That's their view of it, and so they think it's all tied together.
So the Israelis, again, these were public reports, but there were a number of them that said that some of the Revolutionary Guards from Iran were operating forward with Hezbollah. Did your Israeli contacts confirm any of that?
No, they didn't. We stayed at the unclassified level, but as far as I know, there was no confirmation of that. There were no confirmation of that. I don't think any Iranian guards were ever captured. There were reports that they were killed, but I didn't receive any confirmation.
Let's talk a little bit. Your comment about the IDF being trained for police operations in Gaza raised the obvious question as to what Iraq might be doing to the American army, because obviously in fighting the insurgency, a lot of the operations that are taking place in Iraq now are very much like some of the things that the Israelis engaged in or are engaging in Gaza. Do you think that those type of operations might have an impact on the U.S. Army's ability to fight and win traditional wars?
Oh, sure, absolutely. In other words, you're going to fight like you train, and if you train for counterinsurgency, you're going to be good at counterinsurgency. If you train for maneuver warfare, nation on nation, you're going to be good at that. The problem with the U.S. is that we really don't have a choice. We have to do both. We have to be prepared for both, and it's hard to prepare for both. But if your focus is on counterinsurgency, which is now what is happening in Iraq, your skills for the other type are definitely going to suffer.
Did you get a sense for what the end state will ultimately be, at least from the Israeli perspective, in terms of Hezbollah and Hamas over in the Gaza Strip and so forth? To be frank, I cannot imagine if, say, there was a terrorist organization operating from Canada or Mexico firing missiles into our southern or northern borders, that we would allow that to go on for year after year after year. But yet that's what the Israelis have apparently done. Will they ever be able to put a stop to that?
No, but they think they can get it to a manageable level that they can live with. Their ability to exist with a certain level of terrorism and violence is just a part of life in the Mideast. They have rugged neighbors. They live in a rough neighborhood, and they know that they're not going to be able to wipe out terrorism. But they think they can handle Hezbollah. They think they can handle Hamas. They think they can handle Fatah. they can handle Hezbollah when they just did not, is that if they think Iran is the solution, is the core of the problem, and they think Iran has to be addressed, and its nuclear ambitions. They think either they or the world have to take this on, and I think they will. And they think if you can dry up Iranian support, Hezbollah goes away, and they can handle the rest of the terrorism from Gaza and also from the West Bank.
How do you take on Iran? How do you solve that problem?
Well, very clearly, that's one of the most difficult problems facing the world and the United States, and it does not appear to me that people are appropriately engaged. The Iranians appear to have the capability to perfect, if you will, the enrichment cycle that will give them weapons-grade material sometime in the next 9 to 12 months. The Israelis know that. The world accepts that. Then you're probably 2 to 3 years to making that into a nuclear weapon after that. But the Israelis feel that once they get the enrichment cycle perfected, basically things spin out of control. And so Israel has the ability to attack Iran. They don't have the ability to sustain, but they do have the ability to attack. I'm sure that they have practiced it for a long time. But then it's going to be the world's problem, because the reaction of Iran in the center of the epicenter, if you will, of the world's energy resources there, where they can attempt to close the Straits of Hormuz, where they can shut off their Iranian oil. The specter of that is extremely scary. So Israel basically is trying to encourage the world to take on this problem and to stop Iran. And I think the veiled threat is if the world doesn't, Israel will, and then the world certainly will be in a mess.
So do you think Iran can be brought to heel without military force, either from us or the Israelis?
I don't know, but we have to try. We simply have to try. First of all, diplomatic talks. And our stance in the U.S. before, up until now, has been what I think is crazy. And that is, we won't talk to you unless you agree to drop your nuclear ambitions first. That's the object of your talk. You have to start talking to them. You have to talk to them about Iraq. You have to talk to them about their nuclear programs. You have to work toward giving them the carrot and stick to say, look, here's what you will get if you stop your nuclear programs. Here's what you will get if you do not stop your nuclear programs. You have to make it basically worth their while and make it clear to them that their ambitions are going to be destroyed somehow unless they stop their nuclear program. That's one tack. So you've got to either decide to live with a nuclear Iran and the specter that goes with that, or you've got to decide what you're going to do to keep him from being nuclear, and that includes military actions. You have to look at all of those options.
Do the Israelis think that you can talk to Iran?
They obviously would prefer a diplomatic solution, and they think that lots of people should be talking to Iran. Lots of people have interest. China and Russia should certainly have interest in doing this. The other Arab oil states around the region have tremendous interest in making this come out right, and it doesn't appear that anybody's pushing hard on Iran to stop this. Lots of talk, but not a lot of diplomatic activity. So they think you should try talks, but I think they are probably prepared to act militarily, and that is a very, very scary proposition. Not a lot good can come out of that.
Last question, promise. In the note that you sent out on your trip report, you, I believe, mentioned that if Iran goes nuclear, other states in the region might go nuclear. What states do you think would? I mean, Saudi Arabia, obviously, I think has the capability.
You're already seeing it. In other words, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria have already mentioned that they are looking for nuclear technology for reactors. Now, the reactors can be used for peaceful purposes, or they can be used to produce weapons. Now, what you have is the possibility of a hegemonic Persian threat. The Iranians are Persians and not Arabs, with nuclear weapons, and so the reaction of all of the other states who are Sunni Arabs, not Shia Arabs, would certainly be to pursue nuclear technology as a defense, and it'd be the old, mutually assured destruction scenario against Iran. If you attack us at all, we will destroy you. That would be a natural reaction and something that would very, very likely be set off, and there's already talk about it in the region.
Don, I appreciate your time. I really do, and I always appreciate your insights.
Sure. Take